In this video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about a flight I took in the springtime from Richmond down to the south. And it was an interesting flight, number one, because we had great seats with a vantage point where we could see some fascinating cloud formations. And it was at the time of day when we had a spectacular look at the sky, too. And this gives me a very strong argument to why window seats are so valuable and why I always like to fly, when I do fly, with the shades up instead of down, which seems to be the more popular option anymore. But I always just cannot ever get over the fantastic views you get from up in the sky when you're flying. So again, this was what we're going to talk about briefly here is from a flight we took in the early springtime in March, and it was an evening flight heading south from Richmond, and we encountered some really fabulous cloud pictures that I want to share with you and talk a little bit about those clouds. Now, this was the flight path that we took when we took that flight. Again, it was from Richmond down to the south. And notice how there's kind of a turn in the flight path. This is from FlightAware, and this is a flight we transferred, changed planes in Charlotte. But there you can see how instead of going straight down, and we were going down to the west coast of Florida, instead of going straight down, the plane kind of veered way back in this direction, west, and then down over the northeastern Gulf of Mexico before landing here. And it was circumventing this thunderstorm, okay? So there was a huge cluster of thunderstorms with very violent turbulence down in this part of the southeast over Georgia. And it's interesting, when we took off from Charlotte, we were warned that there would be some pretty severe turbulence down in these areas, but the pilot was going to try to circumvent the worst of that, and he did. So again, this is the flight path of the pictures I'm about to show you. The first pictures we took were from about here in the flight path, where we started to see some what we call blow off from the thunderstorm tops that were down here. So we were flying at a cruising altitude of only 26,000 feet, which was much lower than what you'd normally fly when you're flying at that distance. Again, as flying at 26,000 feet, not your typical cruising altitude, and that which is about 35,000 feet thereabouts. And the reason was the pilot was trying to avoid the most severe turbulence, and there's actually turbulence at higher altitudes at around 35,000 feet and higher. And I'll show you the cloud pictures again, where we actually see the blow off from the thunderstorm tops that were down to our south, and how we were flying beneath those. And then I'll look at underneath the plane flight path at around, I'd say, 10,000 feet, we saw these cumulus clouds. So really fascinating cloud pictures from our window seat. Here's an archived radar picture from that March 2nd evening where we were flying to the west of these thunderstorms. So these were the storms from the Savannah, Georgia radar. And the cloud pictures that I showed you, or you'll be seeing, are from these storm tops being blown off by the upper level winds. So let's take a look at those upper level winds. This is from Pivotal Weather. This was the wind. This was as of around 4 o'clock Saturday, March 2nd, the afternoon, when we were before we were in flight. And then again, this is what we were seeing. Now, we were flying out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and these were the 300 millibar winds, roughly 25 to 30,000 feet up in the atmosphere, 300 to 200 millibar winds. Very strong wind current here. We're talking almost 100 knot winds from the southwest moving to the northeast, and our flight path took us this way. And so those clouds and the cloud pictures you're seeing are basically from the blow off, the upper level winds kind of taking the thunderstorms beneath, and then those very high altitude clouds, these strong upper level winds kind of blowing the tops of those in this direction from southwest to northeast. So that's what we were seeing out the window. All right, here is the, these are some of the pictures. Just I want to share 4 just really fantastic pictures with you from that flight I described in the details there. But this was, again, out of Charlotte, North Carolina. This is probably flying through the, we're flying in the skies over the central or western part of South Carolina. And the time is around 7 p.m. The sun just setting, and just a beautiful shot of the sunset. and we're flying at about 26,000 foot altitude. So not way high in the sky as would be typical, but it looks like clear skies above and that little deck of cloudiness below, and just a beautiful sunset as we're looking off to the west. Now, look at that, and then consider that within a half hour or so, all of a sudden we started to encounter this huge deck of cloud cover above us, our flight path, which is unusual. If you've flown much, you rarely see the cloudiness above where you're flying at cruising altitude. And this is because we're flying at 26,000 feet. So we're below this cloud deck. And I'm speculating based on the other videos I showed that this is some of the blow off from those big thunderstorms, which are located down to the south and east of our flight path. And just interesting how thick this cloud deck is. It's a stratiform deck of cloudiness. And I'd guesstimate, since we're at 26,000 feet, this is maybe at around 30,000 feet altitude. Probably a very, very thick layer of cirrostratus clouds, my guess. And I'm also speculating this is blow off from those thunderstorms happening to the southeast. So the strong upper level winds kind of blowing the cloudiness from the tops of those storms to the north. And this is what we're seeing the edge of it. Actually, it would be thicker in the foreground, or the foreground of this picture to the left, but we're looking to the west, so we're seeing kind of the edge of it. Also of note in this picture, the towering cumulus clouds here penetrating a deck of some cumulus clouds and stratocumulus clouds, but within this we're seeing some intrusions upwards of some a little bit more instability, but nothing huge unlike what we have here. There's just another picture here, again, taken around that time frame. And again, we see this just beautiful deck of cloudiness below us. I would guesstimate this is probably at around 15,000 feet maybe, and lower there's some cumulus, stratocumulus clouds. But the interesting feature here again is the deck of cloudiness above our flight path. So at around 30,000 feet and higher, there's this layer of cloud cover that we're flying in between. We're kind of sandwiched in between that. So far, the turbulence wasn't bad at this point in the flight. And just another cool picture, again, looking out. And there you can see that really thick layer of cloudiness above the flight path. So this is likely the result from those thunderstorms, which are down to the southeast. Shortly after this picture was taken, the turbulence got a lot worse in the area, and we did finally catch some really significant turbulence at times as we headed down to the south. And I showed you the flight path in the other previous video, how we tried to divert to the west around that storm. So we were going to the west, but we're still seeing some of the turbulence associated with that. So that's it. Just wanted to share those cool pictures from that flight and how they correlated with the flight path that we took, and also the radar pictures and the high level wind flow pattern pictures, imagery that I showed you in the other videos.